would be Wicked that brought me back to YouTube. It's good to see me, isn't it? I always rooted for the Wicked Witch of the West while watching the 1939 MGM film. It's a little one called The Wizard of Oz. You may have heard of it. If not, like 85-year-old spoiler alert. I mean, the witch's sister was killed by this demon, and all she wanted were these shoes that were legally hers to remember her by. But did they give them to her? No.
Dorothy? Dorothy! Dorothy!
Dorothy then robs her sister's grave, and this fiend and her merry band of furries go on a murder quest given to them by this pasty old dude, and then she proceeds to kill the witch too. As a kid, I thought this really doesn't make any sense, and as an adult, I now know that Dorothy is a serial killer, and no one can convince me otherwise. And obviously so did Gregory Maguire, who went on to write Wicked, The Life and Times of the Wicked Witch of the West. The book was then adapted for the stage in 2003, and the two mediums could not be more different. It's like if you took Euphoria and turned it into High School Musical. Both about high school, totally different vibes. It was my first Broadway show, and I was blown the fuck away. And hot damn, they made it into a movie that made me cry ugly tears. The movie follows the stage's version pretty much to a T, so I thought we could compare the book and the musical, which will encompass both the stage and movie versions, since right now they are exactly the same, and see how they handle LGBT representation and their themes of race. So follow me down the Yellow Brick Road to Gaytown as we discuss... So quick summary of Wicked, the book and the musical both take you from the birth to the melting of the witch, or Elphaba Throp if you use her name on her tax returns. We start with her tumultuous childhood that turns into her days at Shiz University, where Elphaba becomes disillusioned to the political subterfuge the wizard is wreaking havoc on Oz. Elphaba, being the only person in the story with a moral compass, drags Glinda to the Emerald City, where they try to make the wizard see reason. Aw, the youth thinking governments can be toppled with reasonable conversation. But that youthful spell is broken when they find out, surprise surprise, the wizard doesn't want to give up his power. And the story moves to Elphaba dropping out of school and joining the resistance to fight discrimination in Oz. And this is where the wizard and his government label her as wicked. And eventually the story catches up to where we meet Dorothy and Elphaba's eventual untimely demise. This book is literally gay from page 1. The Cowardly Lion and the Tin Man discuss that Elphaba likes the company of women, and also that she's intersex, albeit the language around her being intersex is a bit outdated. This book was published in the 90s, and we have moved on as a society, so fair warning. When Elphaba was born, the midwives could not tell if she was a boy or a girl. She says to Galinda and Bach, "I'm a Munchkinlander by birth anyway, if not by upbringing, and I'm a girl by accident, if not by choice. I'm the natural arbiter between you two." The sentence is a double entendre, as a lot of Maguire's writing is very layered. At that moment, she is literally the mediator between the two friends who are of the opposite sex, and also she calls herself the authority on the two sexes because she's literally between them. Elphaba is also said to have both masculine and feminine features, and Galinda describes her new roommate as, "The green face above the wheat gray fabric seemed almost to glow, and the glorious long straight black hair fell right over where breasts should be, if she would ever reveal any evidence that she possessed them. You'd almost call it unrefined, but not in a social sense, more in a sense of nature not having done its full job with Elphaba, not quite having managed to make her enough like herself." A rather large indication of Elphaba being intersex is when she has an affair with Fiyero. Elphaba has body dysphoria, never allowing him to touch her below the waist, and he also notices that she has a scar in her nether region, alluding to gender normalizing surgeries in which parents of intersex babies would choose which gender they wanted their baby to be. So how does the musical handle all this? This is not a plot point in the musical, which is a big missed opportunity to have an intersex main character. I mean, the list of intersex characters alone is very, very short. End of list. And main characters are only a fraction of that. 5.6 million of the US's population is intersex, and to put that into perspective, that's more people than the entire populations of these 30 states. Pretending that intersex people don't exist plays into the false notion that sex is binary. And that falsehood is used to denounce the existence of intersex people, transgender people, and non-binary people. The musical missed a real opportunity to uplift a group that is continuously ignored. I mean, you could have put it in song. Elphaba is intersex with Glinda and Fiyero. She did have sex. The book has multiple LGBTQ plus relationships. Elphaba's parents, Frex and Melina, are thruppling it up with a traveler named Turtleheart. You were in love with him, Elphaba said, to make it easier. We both were. We shared him, said Frex. Your mother and I did. Within Elphaba and Galinda's circle of friends at school, you have Crope and Tibbet, who are a gay couple, and they have some of the best lines in the book. But of course, none of that's in the musical. But the largest amount of LGBTQ plus representation, both in the book and the musical, comes from our witches themselves, Elphaba and Galinda. Their relationship starts, or really I should say false starts, when they attend their freshman year at Shiz. Dear old Shiz. I gotta stop singing. Galinda, her name before changing it to what we know today, and we'll put a pin in that and come back to why in a second, she has come to school to further her social standings, and that's about it. Her plans are thwarted when she and Elphaba are paired as roommates. They didn't talk much. Galinda was too busy forging alliances with the better girls, who had been her rightful roomie prospects. But the gossip had to start sooner or later. The first wave of discussion about Elphaba concerned her wardrobe and evident poverty, as if her classmates were above noticing her sickly and sickening color. She and Elphaba just begin to ignore each other, and Galinda provides the other socialites with gossip about her to further her social standing. And the musical gets this tension between the two girls across through the song, What Is This Feeling?
What is this feeling so sudden and new? I felt the moment I laid eyes on you. My pulse is rushing, my head is reeling, my face is flushing. What is this feeling? Burning as a flame. Does it have a name? It's loathing, unadulterated loathing.
Aha, you thought they were going to say love, and they said loathing instead. Honestly, turning a love song into a hate song is a clever way to subtextually hint that there could be more to Elphaba and Galinda's relationship. Going back to the text, next we have our reconciliation scene. Elphaba knocks over some of Galinda's hats, and to have something to go tell her socialite friends, Galinda tells Elphaba to put one on. Galinda expected to have to bite the inside of her lip to keep from laughing, but Elphaba dropped the whole sugary plate onto her strange pointed head, and looked at Glinda again from underneath the broad brim. She seemed like a rare flower, her skin stem-like in its soft pearlescent sheen, the hat a botanical riot. "Oh, Miss Elphaba," said Galinda, "you terrible mean thing, you are pretty." Elphaba then goes on to look at herself in the window, to see her reflection, and it reads, "They both gazed at the green and flower spectre reflected. A maple fruit leaf, shaped like a heart, grown lopsided, suddenly whirled out of the night and plastered itself on the reflection in the glass, gleaming red and reflecting the firelight just where the heart would be, or so it seemed from the angle at which Galinda stood. Entrancing," she said. "There's some strange exotic quality of beauty about you. I never thought." "Surprise," said Elphaba, and then she nearly blushed. If darker green constituted a blush, I mean surprise, not beauty. It's just surprise. Well, what do you know? It's not beauty. Which is just the equivalent of...
Oh no, he's hot!
The scene is like something out of a goddamn Hallmark movie, like the heart-shaped leaf on the glass. Glinda, you're such a horn dog, and thus the Gelfie ship was born. The musical follows the same suit in that Glinda gives the ugly hat to Elphaba to wear to the Ozdust ballroom where she is publicly ridiculed. Jesus Christ. Glinda sees that she's in the wrong, and the two make up, throw a duet dance, and they go back to their room and have their own dorm room scene. Also through song.
You will be popular. Why, Miss Elphaba, look at you. You're beautiful.
This is where the representation between the novel and the musical diverge for our two witches. The novel continues to not be subtle. It continues to build on their romantic relationship. There's a moment where Glinda swoons and Elphaba catches her and tells her she loves her. There's their journey to the Emerald City, where they're cozying up to one another, sleeping together, literally tasting that rainbow. The quintessential Gelfie moment is after they try to convince the wizard to stop being a racist piece of shit. They're headed home, and Glinda is waiting for Elphaba at the carriage. Unbeknownst to her, Elphaba is deciding to stay, to go underground to the Resistance to fight the wizard's tyranny. And she bids Glinda goodbye. "You'll be alright," Elphaba said. "Now you're a seasoned traveler. This is just the return leg of a voyage you already know." She put her face against Glinda's and kissed her. "Hold out, if you can," she murmured, and kissed her again. "Hold out, my sweet." And in the musical...
That can't be it. Where's the rest of it?
Don't get me wrong, there is subtext. Subtext being the unspoken or less obvious meaning or message in a literary composition, drama, speech, or conversation. It is not immediately or purposefully revealed by the story itself. It leaves space for others to interpret things differently than intended. So when it comes to representation, especially in this day and age, for me, it doesn't count. In the musical, a lot of the romantic moments are replaced with talks of being best friends. Just two gal pals palling it up in the city, and we're definitely not lovers song.
We're just two friends, two good friends, two best friends. I hope you're happy in the end. I hope you're happy, my friend.
In the novel, after they part ways, Glinda and Elphaba don't really see each other until well into their adulthoods, when Nessa Rose, the Wicked Witch of the East, gets domed with a house. And at first it's like the old days back at Shiz. They're laughing and chatting like old friends. That is until Glinda tells Elphaba she gave her sister's shoes to Dorothy to get them out of Munchkinland, as the Munchkinlanders see them as a sign of oppression of the Wicked Witch of the East. And understandably, Elphaba gets a little pissed at that. You can see each person's side of the story, but unfortunately the two witches cannot, and they have a falling out. As Elphaba strode through the forecourt of Colwyn grounds, she crossed paths once again with Glinda, but both women averted their eyes and hurried their feet along their opposing ways. For the witch, the sky was a huge boulder pressing down on her. For Glinda, it was much the same. But Glinda wheeled around and cried out, "Oh, Elfie!" The witch did not turn. They never saw each other again. What's tragic about this relationship is that it's as if they parted ways too early, both feeling this connection, but too young and naive to stick it out. That connection wasn't able to grow into a love that would have made Elphaba come back to Shiz, or made Glinda jump out of the carriage and follow Elphaba into the Resistance. Their relationship is this big what if, but it is an important one that they take with them throughout their lives. It is just unfortunate that Elphaba ends up melting before they get to reconcile. In this section of the musical, Elphaba gets with which does happen in the books, but in the musical he's engaged to Glinda, so we have this big unnecessary love triangle, just in case you thought they were gay. No, they are fighting over a man.
He doesn't love you and he never did. He loves me! Feel better? Yes, I do.
This section is played for jokes and it's cute, but we could have got the gay, so you can critique the things that you love and still love them. I'm sure my family thinks the same about me. Oh my god. Now we've made it to their goodbye scene, and goddamn, I love this song.
Because I knew you. Because I knew you. I have been changed for good.
Instead of the tragic ending that the book gives us, we get a bittersweet ending where they get to say goodbye and tell each other what they mean to each other before they part ways for good. The novel is really few and far between with its lighter moments, so I really do like this change in the musical. And depending on which set of actresses you get, any of these moments in the musical could be gayer. Some of them were kissing and doing the most. Did I get that in my version? No, I got crumbs. Crummy subtext. And to find those moments, I had to scour the internet. Motion sickness from bootleg should not be a requirement for representation. Whoa, whoa, whoa! As we spend over 12 hours a day consuming media, representation is crucial. According to this study that Paramount Insights did, 59% of people who feel poorly represented say this makes them feel unimportant, affecting their self-esteem, sense of belonging, and opportunities in life. The author of Wicked, Gregory Maguire, is a gay man, and he wrote 7 fully fleshed LGBTQ+ characters, and the musical used a whopping 0 of them.
Okay, fine, I'm cool, I'm fine.
I understand the need to cut things for time. The musical is almost 3 hours, and you need to fast forward through things to get to the good meaty parts of the story. So trimming Elphaba's parents' relationship and losing Crope and Tibbet altogether is a little understandable. You don't have the time a book has to amass all those characters. But when your main characters are part of the LGBTQ+ community, you should do right by them. And they just decided to throw all that out the window. To me, it was almost like they were afraid to push it into that territory, as they would alienate their rich, elite, straight audience that is the unfortunate target of Broadway shows. And now the vast audience of moviegoers are getting the same watered-down representation. And it's really disappointing given the rocky state of LGBTQ+ rights in the US right now. Hate crimes against LGBTQ+ people continue to climb, and since 2003, for the first time in their 40+ year history, the Human Rights Campaign declared a national state of emergency for LGBTQ+ Americans. As between 2023 and 2024, there has been over 750 pieces of LGBTQ+ state legislation that has been introduced, a lot of which are being passed into law. Their legislation ranges from curriculum censorship, the Don't Say LGBTQ+ law that suppresses our existence, sports bans for trans students, and bans on transgender healthcare, and so much, much more. Representation in media helps us understand and accept groups that are different from us. And though I love the musical, both the stage and the movie versions, with such rich source material that uplifts gay, polyamorous, bisexual, and intersex stories, the musical just falls short. Let's talk about race, baby. Let's talk about you and me. Let's talk about all the good things and the bad things that may be. Let's talk about race. I'm on a step stool because I'm short. A huge theme in Wicked is the wizard's autocratic grip on Oz, and how allowing autocrats into power fosters oppression, discrimination, racism, and classism.
Wait, is this fucking play about us?
Yeah, it is.
My whole childhood was lived in fear of the war and in fear of possibly being drafted and being sent off to kill the Wicked Witch of the Viet Cong. And so in a way, as I say, I think the story of Wicked began by watching the film and by ingesting and digesting what it was saying about power structures. Then the Gulf War, the Abu Ghraib, the situation at Abu Ghraib happened. And I thought to myself, all right, Gregory, you need to go back to Oz and you need to reclaim your picture of Oz as being just as corrupt and dangerous as the world in which we live. It's not candy-colored. It's not the all-singing, all-dancing Munchkin Revue. It's a world that mirrors the sadness and also the hope and possibility of the world in which we live.
Though the text is more in-depth, the themes of race and discrimination in the novel and musical are very similar. With Oz being a reflection of the real world, particularly the United States, we can look at this fallen society and remind ourselves of the consequences of inaction and complacency. Now let's venture into everyone's favorite topic, politics. Let me bring out my electoral map of Oz. Emerald City, red. Gillikin Country, yep, red. Munchkinland, that's definitely red. But you see that tiny strip of blue down there? That's the Quadlings. We'll start there. The wizard's first taste of power in the books, and solely in the books, as this is not a plot point within the musical, is during Elphaba's childhood. It became known that in Quadling Country, there were ruby deposits underneath the swampy earth. Quadling culture thought of the rubies as the blood of Oz and should stay in the ground, which clashed with the wizards' thought of having the rubies for, money. Elphaba says, the wizards' men began draining the Badlands to get the ruby deposits. They managed to chase out the Quadlings and kill them, round them up in settlement camps for their own protection and starve them. So the wizard did a little bit of genociding, and genocides cannot occur without the complicity or the passive acceptance of the governed people. And the people of Oz really did not care for the Quadlings. Frex says to Turtleheart, who is a Quadling, and his lover, directly south of the center of Oz is Quadling country. Badlands, I'm told. Marshy, useless, infested with bugs and feverish air. Turtleheart looked puzzled at this. A Quadling ranked about as low on the social ladder as it was possible to get and still be human. Discrimination always starts somewhere to keep some people on top and others on the bottom. With the Quadlings gone, the wizard needed a new target to keep the Ozians on his side. Most of the book and musical, we focus on the wizard's systemic oppression of the sentient animals. They are our substitute marginalized group. I lean towards race as Gregory's allegory for discrimination because the animals were segregated into less livable areas, just like the formative era of Jim Crow, the rounding up of indigenous and Asian people into internment camps at different time periods in the United States, which is just a fancy word for concentration camps, by the way. And speaking of World War II, there were the ghettos that Nazis placed Jewish people into, which ultimately led to said concentration camps. There's also the use of pseudoscience with cages and pens to oppress animals. Just like how pseudoscience was historically used to falsely claim that black people were naturally subservient, justifying white people's perceived quote-unquote right to enslave us. They went on to use these tactics in the Holocaust, and now? Oh my god. So all signs point to race, but you really can insert marginalized group here and get the same outcome message of discrimination equals bad. Through the character of Dr. Dillamond, Elphaba and Galinda's goat professor, we see the effects of this discrimination. Animals have to pay double what their human counterparts have to. They are not allowed to attend university. They are pigeonholed into certain jobs. And they have to sit at the back of trains. The only difference between the novel and the musical is how far they go in showing the consequences of that discrimination. In the book, Dr. Dillamond is killed for his scientific discoveries that human and animals don't have a difference between them biologically. In the musical, Dr. D is arrested, put into the wizard's captivity, and loses his ability to speak.
Dr. Dillamond, don't you remember me?
Towards the end of the novel, we see that the wizard has his eyes set on oppressing the Munchkins next. Feels like that poem. First they came for the Quadlings, and I didn't speak out. Then they came for the animals, that I didn't speak out. Now they're coming for the Munchkins, and there's no one left to speak out for me. And again, it's kind of hitting too close to home, isn't it? The most blatant allegory is that Elphaba is discriminated against for her skin color. Now, Elphaba is the only green person in Oz, so the discrimination she faces isn't based on a historical precedent like it is in the United States. It's the least one-to-one as allegories go in this book, but you get the point.
No one should be scorned or laughed at or told to keep quiet.
Both the book and the musical do a good job of showing how autocrats break down a society with turmoil and distrust until they look like the savior and the only answer to the problems they caused.
If you just follow the road, it's gonna lead you right to me.
And portray how the neglectful inaction of the people of Oz lays the groundwork for the wizard's autocracy. All of this is really well shown through the white liberal lens of Galinda's perspective. In the novel, on her first day of arriving at Shiz, Galinda has to share a train car with Dr. Dillamond to her dismay. Dr. D asks Galinda, "I wonder what you think of the wizard's proposed bans on travel." Galinda had never heard of any bans. She said as much. Dillamond, was it? Dr. Dillamond explained in a conversational tone that the wizard had thoughts of restricting animal travel on public conveyances, except in designated transports. Galinda replied that animals had always enjoyed separate services. "No, I am speaking of animals," said Dillamond. "Those with a spirit." "Oh, those," said Galinda crudely. "Well, I don't see the problem." My, said Dillamond. "Don't you indeed. Is that right for a creature with a spirit? He said. From here to there to here in a pen. I quite agree. Travel is so broadening, said Glinda. They endured the rest of the trip, including the change across the platform at Dixie House, in a frosty silence. The phrase travel is so broadening works on many levels. Glinda, like many on the internet, want to sound smart without actually saying anything at all. Glinda was slow coming to terms with actual learning. She had considered her admission into Shiz University as a sort of testimony to her brilliance and believed that she would adorn the halls of learning with her beauty and occasional clever sayings. She supposed glumly that she had been meant to be a sort of living marble bust. This youthful intelligence. Admire her. Isn't she lovely? And ironically, her views aren't broad. They are actually very narrow-minded, not taking into account the systemic oppression that the animals are dealing with. Glinda is smart, to varying degrees, whether it's in the book or the musical. She just chooses not to educate herself, because those animal rights problems have nothing to do with her. She doesn't challenge her bubble of beliefs because they are agreeable with her place in life. And anyone who tries to poke holes in that bubble and take her out of her comfort zone gets pushed back.
Mrs. Glinda?
It's Galinda with a G.
Yes, of course. Glinda.
I really don't see what the problem is. Every other professor seems to be able to pronounce my name.
This is America. We speak English.
Oh, Galinda, your racism is showing. Hide it with a hair flip. Yep, there you go. All better. Galinda represents the average citizen in Oz and also the United States. Her eyes are shut, and she is totally okay with the status quo. That is, until Elphaba pries her eyes open with a crowbar, and her world is actually broadened. But even then, her activism is still performative. When Dr. D is killed in the book and arrested in the musical, Galinda takes a stand.
About the line cut. And everything. I think about that day a lot.
So do I.
Well, me too. I think about it constantly. Poor Dr. Dillamond. It makes one want to take a stand. In fact, I've been thinking of changing my name.
Your name?
Yes. Since Dr. Dillamond had his own way of pronouncing my name, in solidarity, and to express my outrage, I shall henceforward be known no longer as Galinda, but as simply Glinda.
What the fuck does that do for animals? It's a gesture that makes her feel better, but this activism doesn't educate or inform. It doesn't provide resources, create social change, or enact policy. It does nothing to help solve the problem. Hence, it's performative in nature. Glinda would be one of those people that change their profile pic to a black square, or even the blue bracelet wearing people to show that you're one of the good ones, and that's all the activism I have to do this year. And in both mediums, when these societal problems get too heavy, Glinda reverts back to her old ways, not only conforming back to societal norms she now is aware are harmful, but also becoming a leader within this repressive society. When Glinda chose to help the wizard and Madame Morrible, she became a direct tool of oppression of the Ozian people, and she did this for the sole reason that it benefited her. But both the book and the musical treat Glinda as being in the wrong. In the first song of the musical, the lyrics are, "And goodness knows the wicked's lives are lonely. Goodness knows the wicked die alone. It just shows when you're wicked, you're left only on your own. Yes, goodness knows the wicked's lives are lonely. Goodness knows the wicked cry alone. Nothing grows for the wicked. They reap only what they've sown." We need to remember, even though this is the first song, this is Glinda at the end of her journey. She is the one in the end who ends up alone. She is the one that reaped what she sowed. She went after power instead of fighting it, and because of that, she lost her only real friend, in the musical her fiance, and has to continually lie about them to keep her status.
It's about speaking truth to power and how hard that is.
Yeah.
What Glinda is going through at the end of at least this movie is she's not able to be strong enough yet to really be a face of dissent and rebellion.
I think yes, but also there's a different version of that, which is that she is strong enough to know that she will never choose that because she can't.
Oh.
She doesn't have the tools, and she knows what
Wow,
is
that's so interesting.
important to her.
Yes.
And it's like, it's not that she's not ready to do that. It's just that she's not a person who's gonna do that.
You shouldn't have to lose everything when you stand up to power. But as we've seen historically, it's an unfortunate possibility, both in Oz and in our real world. Through Glinda's arc, the novel and musical demonstrate how discrimination thrives when ordinary people fail to act authentically and courageously. We have to honestly ask ourselves, do we want to be a Glinda or do we want to be an Elphaba? Or a little bit of both. It's up to you and your truth. But it isn't until she loses everything and is willing to stand up to power that Glinda is now in the position to change Oz and actually do some real good and become virtuous, living up to her name, Glinda the Good. It's such a good story, god damn it.
Cynthia, she's a really cool dancer. Cynthia, boogie to the groove now.
Oh, you thought we were done. In the film adaptation, Elphaba is being played by Cynthia Erivo, a British-Nigerian actress. Elphaba is green, she can be played by any actress, but Erivo being a black woman, it did add an air of authenticity to her performance. The subject matter about a girl being ostracized because of her skin color and having to fight for rights, and black women being at the forefront of almost every fight for rights in this country, it's kind of our thing. And since they whitewashed... who is described in the book to be a new student oddly dressed in suede leggings and a white cotton shirt with a pattern of blue diamonds tattooed on the dark skin of his face and hands. Yeah, Elphaba likes her men like she likes her coffee. Black. Or indigenous. Or Indian. Or any color that is not this. As hot as Jonathan Bailey is, he is not what I would call dark. And neither are any of these. Hollywood has a tendency to take roles for people of color and just cast white people. Or they'll do the even egregious endeavor and cast a white person to play a person of color. They do this because they think that their white audience can't relate to people of color on screen, which is weird because they ask us to relate to them all the time. And Fiyero barely being cast as people of color on stage and by a white person in the movie, it's as if you're telling the world that people of color can't be the hot guy. And it's even more egregious for Elphaba. To my knowledge, in the Broadway show, no black woman has had the principal role of Elphaba ever. And the musical is 20 fucking years old. It's just a little weird that a musical whose message is anti-discrimination would actively partake in it. Just a little antithetical to your whole theme, but hey, you do you. Quick sidebar. Well. Since the movie came out, and of course after I finished recording, the musical has now hurried up and casted a black woman to play Elphaba full-time for the first time in Broadway history. She's even said to have a braided wig now. Don't get me wrong, this is great, this is amazing, but my analysis still stands. It really shouldn't have taken 2 decades to get more diversity in your casting. Okay, back to the video. Black women usually aren't main characters in Hollywood films, so one being cast in one of the biggest musicals ever and being immortalized as such, you know, I thought it was pretty neat. But of course some weren't very happy about it. There were those crashing out when they see a person of color or LGBT people just existing. But if I have a little bit of empathy for those people, what seems like ridiculous emotions are actually just fear. Fear of no longer being able to see themselves in their media. With white people, mostly white men, being centered in media since, well, its inception, even the smallest representation of marginalized people breaks their suspension of disbelief and feels like an encroachment on what is perceived to be theirs, when truly, media belongs to everyone that consumes it. It feels like something is being taken away from you, when it's not. In actuality, straight white men still make up almost 70% of the characters we see in our fictional media today. I get that the newness makes you uncomfortable, but you have to understand the lack of representation has always made us uncomfortable. There is a balance to be had for sure, and we're in a flux period, so we're still trying to figure that out. But instead of saying, this is mine and you can't have it, can you look at it from our perspective and see historically why we have never had this representation? So now that we've gotten that out of the way, I do want to address a specific group. Black women. What I really want to focus on are the people that look just like me, that thought casting a black woman for the role of Elphaba was not a good decision. I don't think these people were trying to be malicious, well, not all of them. Most bring up genuine concerns stem from a history of media that still often doesn't depict black women, especially dark-skinned black women, in a positive light. I can see how they came to their conclusions. A lot of them mention misogynoir, and I will admit I had not heard of this word up until now, and so of course I read the entire book by Dr. Bailey, who coined the phrase misogynoir, and did my own research and came up with my own conclusions, and I conclude that they might be wrong. Dr. Bailey defines misogynoir as anti-black racist misogyny that black women experience, particularly in US visual and digital culture. Misogynoir describes the uniquely co-constitutive, racialized, and sexual violence that befalls black women as a result of their simultaneous and interlocking oppression at the intersection of racial and gender marginalization. Black women experience racism and sexism not as discrete or separate forms of prejudice, but as inseparable amalgamations of toxicity. Dr. Bailey goes on to say that misogynoir is deployed because of socially held beliefs about black women, mainly in the form of stereotypes. Those that stem from our lack of femininity and our lack of desirability and our lack of intelligence. You have the mammy stereotype, the asexual servant who's ready to whip you up a dish of collard greens and serve you a sassy comment.
Men don't burn chicken.
You have the welfare queen stereotype, someone lazy who doesn't want to work and who will repeatedly take advantage of the system.
You done took my man, you had those fucking babies, and you got me put off the welfare from running your goddamn stupid ass mouth.
When in actuality, it's mostly white people who take advantage of the welfare system. The Jezebel stereotype, she's hypersexualized and can make a man do anything with her body.
I can make you bust before I ever meet you.
The sapphire trope, which we know as the angry black woman, nothing can appease her. She's just angry at the world.
I ain't scared of no popo, call the popo, ho, call the popo.
You have the strong black woman trope, the superwoman who is an emotionless robot, who's independent and can carry the world on her shoulders and never waver.
Fight or we die.
How marginalized people are seen in our media is how not only the United States but the world views us. And thus these stereotypes have real world consequences. Like the strong black woman stereotype. It shows that we can take on anything in the world. There's the myth that black women can tolerate more pain than other cultures. When black women go to the doctors, we believe them less when they express concerns about symptoms they're having, particularly about pain. And black women are 3 to 4 times more likely to die in childbirth. So, with all that being said, let's see if a black woman playing Elphaba invites misogynoir. We'll use this now deleted tweet thread as it has multiple grievances and is kind of an amalgam of what I've been seeing online. You can pause to read the entire thing here, since this video is getting way too long already. But I'll start us off with the first tweet. I still think casting Elphaba as a black woman isn't the progressive serve they think it is. Since she's discriminated against for her features and color, then casting a black woman with Afrocentric features invites misogynoir to a story that is ill-equipped to handle it. They do show people running from Elphaba and being disgusted of her because of the color of her skin, but not her Afrocentric features. That has nothing to do with it, especially in the movie because half the cast are people of color, which is awesome. Half of Munchkinland is black. These guys are doing hardcore parkour. Find the prettiest girl and give her a whirl. Hey, that's that girl. These guys are crumping, for God's sakes. I love it. That negates that those features are undesirable. But for the sake of the argument, let's say that isn't the case. Under nuance, stereotypes fall apart. And remember, Glinda is our POV character when discussing discrimination in Oz. When her prejudices about Elphaba are challenged, she actually comes to see that Elphaba is beautiful. Her Afrocentric features, her green skin, and all. And that it is Glinda's mistake and blindness for not seeing it. And it's everyone's mistake for not seeing it.
Why, Miss Elphaba? Look at you. You're beautiful.
Elphaba does put on a strong front, which could lean into the strong black woman stereotype, but again that stereotype is shattered because we get to see a wide range of emotions from Elphaba. We see her loving her sister and friends.
Don't help me. She'll be fine.
we see that the discrimination she faces takes a toll on her.
She's green.
Oh, well, she doesn't have to be. Would that be your heart's desire?
We see that she wants to be desired.
I'm not that girl.
The trope says we must carry the weight of the world on our shoulders with rarely a crack in our strength, making us superhuman, inhuman. These vulnerable emotions automatically make Elphaba more human, and according to Dr. Bailey's text, it does not fit that stereotype. So does Cynthia playing Elphaba invite misogynoir? Well, yes. But not because the story or its characters are ill-equipped to handle it. Unfortunately, our being, our very states of existence as Black women invites misogynoir. It does not matter what job we have, how successful we turn out to be, or how educated we are. These prejudiced, preconceived notions about the color of our skin and gender are so deeply embedded in American society that people often project those stereotypes and prejudices onto the narratives themselves, detached from what the story is even about. Those are the subconscious prejudices that automatically paint Black people as more dangerous. And that is why we are targeted and killed more often by the police. So should we let that stop us from taking these roles? No. What the fuck? In fact, we should fight for these roles like Elphaba that allow us to convey our wide range of emotions because we are human. Continually seeing us as full-fledged human beings in our media will erode those stereotypes until they don't exist anymore. And then there will be no cognitive dissonance between the Black women you see on your screens and the Black women you meet in your everyday life. That is what representation does. So my question to Black women is, what do we want? I don't think the fear of misogynoir should stop us from succeeding. Seeing as Cynthia absolutely smashed this role of Elphaba, and knowing that some of you did not want her to play that role, I think is a disservice to actresses just like her and just Black women in general. I think we have to be careful with using terms like misogynoir because this doesn't fit the bill, and this tweet got 3 million views before it was deleted. The fear is understandable, but the mishandling of the analysis is where misinformation can spread. Wicked is now the highest grossing movie musical of all time, and it has a Black woman at the helm. As Dr. Bailey said, sometimes misogynoir is unavoidable. It is how much harm that is reduced that counts, and I think Cynthia playing this role did a lot more good than it did harm.
I knew, as much as I admired the musical, and do, that the musical had soft-soaped some of the social agonies that I was trying to shed light upon in my novel. I did think my story was taken and reshaped, with my permission, to serve a larger audience and possibly a younger audience, and there were things in my story that had to be left out of the Broadway show.
I wholeheartedly love Wicked, both the book and the musical. Cynthia and Ariana fucking killed it. Michelle Yeoh, always slays. Jonathan Bailey was really fucking hot. Even SpongeBob was good. But it is not without its criticisms, especially the musical. Mostly the musical. Besides actually meeting someone from a marginalized group and forming a personal connection with them, it is media representation that is the next most powerful thing to influence people's positive shifts in attitudes towards marginalized groups. The musical's erasure of LGBTQ+ representation robs the audience of having that allegorical mirror to hold up to our society to learn from. The challenging of societal norms and the change that could have come from that is lost. It's really a shame that a musical that champions diverse ideas and fighting for what's right doesn't practice what it preaches, especially in this tumultuous time in the United States. I'd say there's no place like home, but our home is a fucking dumpster fire right now. If you haven't noticed, Oz being a reflection of the United States fits uncomfortably well these days.
Hello, darkness, my old friend.
So I wanted to quickly end on The Wizard. The story has the wonderful Wizard of Oz, and we have the Grand Wizard of the United States in office. In the novel, we only get one meeting with the wizard, and it is wild. Elphaba begins, "Please, sir, the hardship on the animals is more that can be borne. It isn't just the murder of Dr. Dillamond. It's the forced repatriation, this chattelizing of free beasts. What's happening is immoral." "I do not listen when anyone uses the word immoral," said the wizard. "In the young, it is ridiculous. In the old, it is sententious and reactionary, and an early warning sign of apoplexy. In the middle-aged, who love to fear the idea of moral life the most, it is hypocritical." "If not immoral, then what word can I use to imply wrong?" Elphaba said. "Try mysterious, and then relax a little. The thing is, my green girlie, it is not for a girl, or a student, or a citizen to assess what is wrong. It's the job of leaders, and that's why we exist." For most of the book, the wizard is an omnipresent force pressing its boot down on the neck of Ozian society, and you mostly just encounter the oppressive destruction that lays in its wake. It's very effective to make him feel like a threat, one that Elphaba will want to join the resistance to fight against. When we meet the wizard in the musical, he's more like the version in the MGM film.
Wonderful, they called me wonderful, so I said wonderful. If you insist.
He's extremely charismatic, funny even, has quippy one-liners. He knows how to make people feel like they're important to get them on his side. He also says how it's fun to lie to people. Is it starting to sound familiar yet?
It's all just smoke and mirrors. And that's the truth.
The truth is not a thing of fact or reason. The truth is just what everyone agrees on. Where I come from, we believe all sorts of things that aren't true. We call it history. A man's called a traitor, or a liberator. A rich man's a thief or philanthropist. Is one a crusader or ruthless invader? It's all in which label is able to persist.
The genius in this portrayal is that he isn't shown to be stereotypically evil. It's almost like they don't want you to think about how he's oppressing people until the rug is pulled out from underneath you. The book shows the terrible consequences that come with that oppression, while the musical shows how a charismatic idiot can rise to power. And the movie seems to be putting those two things together to have an even more effective allegory.
Folks have come to expect that sort of thing, and you gotta give the people what they want. Thank you.
Both the book and the musical are saying that if we ignore discrimination and oppression, that is a slippery slope to the wrong people gaining power. And they do a lot of damage once they have that power, some that could be irreversible. To keep our heads down like the people of Oz is to let dictators, oligarchs, and racists rise to power and keep it. Representation is only a tool, an important tool, to start to combat those societal norms. But representation shouldn't stop at media. We need great representation in our government institutions as well. Media can change minds, but representation in government can change our lives. There is a lot more of us than those governing. The power has and always will lie with the people. We only have to use it. If we don't like what our government is doing, we need to let our voices be heard and things will change. You can join a protest if that's your thing. It's not my thing. I don't like crowds. So I write essays. Write an essay. Write a letter. Engage in civil disobedience. We need to get educated and learn how our government works so that we can speak up and protect not only ourselves, but our fellow community members that are not always seen. We have to go to town halls and let these government officials know that they work for us and demand better from them. We need to invest in representatives who will fight for the well-being of all their constituents, and not just those who are perceived to be on their side. We need to do research and not just vote in presidential elections, but local government ones as well. Because when the federal government is failing us, we need to make sure our mayors, governors, and other local government branches can carry that weight. We need to put in the work from the ground up to make sure our society is inclusive for all, affordable for all, and equal for all. Because right now, Wicked feels like a cautionary tale if we don't stand up and fight the wizard. Thanks for watching.